responsible for restaurant marketing, this one's for you. The Restaurant Marketing Workshop is happening June 2nd and 3rd in Boston. Save 20% at restaurantmarketingworkshop.com using the code PODCAST. Welcome to the Pizza Marketplace podcast. I'm Mandy Detwiler, editor of Pizza Marketplace, and I'm here today with Jamie Cecil, Vice President of Franchise Development for Mellow Mushroom. Jamie, thanks so much for being with us today. Now, why don't we talk a little bit about Mellow Mushroom? Tell me about the brand, how it got started, how many units it has. Just tell me a little bit about Mellow Mushroom.
Sure. Most definitely. The brand started back in 1974. Actually, three guys got together, two Georgia Tech and a Georgia grad actually got together and wanted to create a place for people to go grab a slice and a cold beer. And honestly, they had zero intention of ever franchising this thing back in the day when it first started. So just over time, it's built up, been around over 50 years now. Got a little over 160 units and looking to accelerate the growth throughout the country. So, it's kind of got that the Mellow Mushroom's got a cool little vibe to it. Great product, great pizza, very great, cool atmosphere. Each store is a little unique. I like to call them, they're kind of unicorns. There's not one store that looks alike, which is kind of fun, but it makes it a challenge as well. But every store has phenomenal pizza and great service. That's the goal.
Right. Now, Mellow Mushroom is kind of unique in that each one of the stores is unique. There's no two that look alike.
Exactly. Yeah. And again, that's part of the beauty of the brand. But it also, creates some opportunities as well. But we really try and tie when we do go into a town, we really try and tie in some of that local feel, local community feel, so people can really kind of grasp onto it and make it their Mellow. The franchisees over the years have done a great job with that, and we want to continue doing that as we expand throughout the country.
What do you think is the most difficult part of franchise development? Is it going to be finding that perfect location or permitting? What's going to be the most difficult part?
Honestly, this is going to sound silly, but getting someone to sign on the dotted line. Yeah, I mean there's a challenge, but the real challenge in my eye is finding that perfect piece of real estate, making sure that the money that franchisee invests is going to produce, money and make them money throughout the years. So finding that perfect piece of real estate is difficult. And I always tell people when we first get started, I always tell them, so look, there's going to be times when we go find real estate and you're not going to like me because I'm going to say no. And because, we're not looking for something to be successful for 1 or 2 years. You're looking for 10, 15, 20, sometimes even 30 years for a potential piece of real estate to be successful.
What do you think is the perfect piece of real estate? Is it going to be an end cap or a standalone building? What do you think is for Mellow Mushroom? What are you guys looking for in the perfect kind of location?
It's kind of changed over the years, right? And honestly, when you come out of the ground with something that really that kind of plants the flag in a town, right? So if you're start with just a plain piece of dirt and building a building, that really kind of sets the tone for that town. They're like, oh, what's going on there? But we'll go into an end cap of a strip center. We have no problems with that. But I think the perfect piece if you're going to do a perfect piece of real estate, it's coming out of the ground with something, because that does a lot of marketing for you up front, right? Because everybody's up when you see that building going up. I mean, yourself, when you're driving around your town, you're like, oh, I wonder what that's going to be. Oh, what's that? And that's all that people talk about for a long time. And it's kind of free marketing right out of the gate. And then you put your sign up like, oh, it's going to be a Mellow Mushroom. Great. We got to go check that out when they open. So it's coming out of the ground with something I think is key. But obviously, end cap a strip center, you can do the same thing, But that coming out of the ground with a building is a great way to kind of set the tone in a town.
How has the pitch for a franchise changed from when you started in the industry to where we are now in 2026?
Well, today's franchisee is a lot more sophisticated than they were, 5, 10 years ago, but especially more than 15, 20 years ago. They're a lot more educated. They care a lot more about the bottom line. They want to see an item 19. They want to talk to franchisees. They want to validate what you're telling them. So you've got to make sure that, you've got franchisees that can validate what you say. Otherwise, it's going to be tough. It'd be tough selling, because again, that franchisee, by the time they submit their application to you, they've done a lot of footwork or groundwork on their own before they reach out to you. So they kind of already have an idea of what they want to do. Whereas back then they would just, reach out and, yeah, let's do this, and that cycle was pretty quick. Now they want to visit with franchisees. They want to talk to franchisees. Obviously, discovery day is critical in our world too. And they want to meet the executive team. They want to meet with the CEO and ask them questions about where they see this potential business going in the next 5-10 years.
What is the most critical piece of legwork that franchisees should be doing when they're starting the process?
And I don't know that there's one single, well, I mean, obviously they need to get the FDD, right? The franchise disclosure document. Look at that and make sure they have an item 19. And brands that don't have an item 19, I think they're going to struggle, because that's going to validate some sales figures for them. Obviously reaching out to existing franchisees, talk to people that are actually dealing with that executive team and dealing with that brand, and find out, hey, looking back, is this something you would sign up for again? And if the answer is yes, okay, great. Now, granted, not every single franchisee of every brand is going to be happy. That's next to impossible. But if the overwhelming majority don't want to be a part of the brand anymore, that sends a pretty good signal. And then obviously people that, if the majority want to be a part of the brand, then yeah, obviously that executive team and that brand is doing something right.
Now, like we talked about, Mellow Mushroom is known for its kind of unchained feel where every location is unique. As VP of franchise development, how do you balance that creative, localized energy with the need for standardized operating procedures? How do you make sure that, we don't have a rogue franchisee just going out there on their own?
Well, you can be creative on the design. You can't be creative on the food, right? Because that, again, the food is what brings people back. Our product, our dough and our sauce, our pizza, the wings, our salads, our burger, that's what brings people back. I mean, the physical plant is cool. You got to have that, but you've got to make sure that the food is spot on every single time. So you can't vary it. Well, let's do it this way. No. We've been doing this for 50 plus years. There's a reason why that Mellow has been as successful as it has been over the years. Follow the formula with the food. Now, like I said, on the physical plant, that's where we can let the franchisees get a little creative, and that's where the creativity comes into play.
Great. Now, you've recently focused on centralized dough production and streamlined kitchen layouts. What is operational simplicity, or why is operational simplicity the biggest selling point for a modern franchisee?
Well, the labor market out there, right? I mean, the labor pool that's out there, you need to make restaurants as easy to operate as possible, because the labor pool it's difficult out there, and you're having to pay top dollar for mid to average range employees. And I've been in this business a long time, and I remember back in the day when I was at TGI Fridays, everything was made from scratch. Recipes were complex. I mean, it was an arduous process to run a TGI Fridays. And today, I mean, when you look at what's out there, Raising Cane's, and they do chicken fingers and that's it. Making things simple, making it easy to do business, right? That's the key. Make it replicable over and over, and easy for people to train too. And again, that's why we have the conveyor ovens, the lava rocks ovens that we use. You literally put the pizza on one side and it comes out done on the other in 6+ minutes. So having that operational efficiency is critical in franchise success today, in my opinion.
Now, I believe you joined Tijuana Flats in 2023. Is that correct?
Correct.
You were tasked with leading expansion across the Southeast. What is the first thing that you look for when determining if a new market like Alabama or Tennessee is ready for a brand? How do we know that an area is ready for a Mellow Mushroom?
There's a couple of factors, right? Obviously, population plays into, you got to have there's got to be a sizable amount of people in a particular town, and then the demographic makeup. You've got to have, you got to have a certain level of income. Again, we're not a cheap pizza by any means. We're not going to compete with the Domino's and Little Caesars. That's not our world. So we need to have a little more sophisticated than most. So having those two pieces, a strong population and good demographics, good background, good income levels are key for Mellow Mushroom.
Now, you have a philosophy that you don't buy a franchise because someone is a good salesperson. It's not about the hard sell. What are the real keys to building a long-term relationship with a candidate? How do you go about starting to build that relationship with a franchisee?
You know, and it's funny because it's true. You're not going to buy a franchise. You're not going to buy a Mellow Mushroom because I'm a good salesperson. That's not the reason. You're going to buy a Mellow Mushroom because it fits well into what you want to do or what you want to accomplish. My job as VP of Franchise Sales Development here at Mellow is to walk you through that process and make sure you understand what you're getting yourself into. Everybody sees a restaurant on a Friday and Saturday night. They're like, "Oh my gosh, you got to be making so much money. This looks so easy." Well, come back on Monday night, come back on Tuesday night, or come back when the dishwasher calls off or your two cooks call off on a Friday night. And those are the things you've got to prepare people for. They need to go in. You can't tell them everything, obviously, because it would take forever, but they need to understand what they're getting themselves into. The restaurant business it's not easy. It is a difficult business to be involved in, and they need to understand that. Otherwise, I always tell people, look, if I fail if 6 months down the road after you're open, you call me and be like, "Jamie, I had no idea it was going to be this difficult." That's when I failed. I mean, I can sell anything, but my job is to educate you on what you're getting yourself into and making sure this fits into your life. Because if it
Right.
doesn't fit in your life, you're not going to be happy. You're going to be miserable.
You often visit candidates on their own turf. What can you learn about a potential franchisee in their own environment that you can't learn in a discovery day?
Well, a couple of things. If they're a franchisee of another brand, I like to go visit those other brands and see if they have XYZ brand, stop in and, okay, how are they operating that brand, right? If that restaurant is dirty and the employees are rude and they're not wearing uniforms and the food takes forever and it's just a sloppy, what makes you think they're going to operate your brand any better, right? So making sure that they're operating their current brands as they should, and because again, they're not, a leopard doesn't change its spots, right? You need to make sure that they're operating what they have the right way, because all the systems in the world can't fix somebody that they don't want to run a good or clean restaurant. It's difficult.
Speaking of, how do you handle the no when a candidate is a great person but just a bad fit for the brand?
That's a difficult conversation, and you've got to be, hopefully by that time I've built a good enough relationship with them. So look, it's not going to work. You kind of have to play the dad in the role, and so look, this is just not going to. It's not a good fit. Appreciate the time. Thank you for your interest in Mellow Mushroom. Obviously, please continue to frequent Mellow Mushroom, but it's not going to work out long term as for you to be a franchisee. And again, those are difficult conversations, but I'd rather have that difficult conversation then before they're open than have them get open and create all kinds of havoc for operations and marketing and all that stuff. Again, one of the things about getting the franchising world is it's like getting married, and you got to be able to make sure that you can wake up on the other side of the bed from each other and going, you know what, you're going to do things that I don't like, and we're going to do things that you don't like. But in the end, our goal is to have successful Mellow Mushrooms and make sure everybody is successful and out there operating the correct way. So if we can all kind of walk down that path, then everybody's happy, and you can get past those difficult discussions. But having that discussion up front before their franchisee is tough, but it's a necessary step in order to kind of sometimes save yourself from a lot of headaches down the road.
What's the biggest mistake that you see franchisees or potential franchisees making when they're looking into a brand?
It's the kind of the flash in the pan brands, the brands that aren't tried and tested. Again, with Mellow, 50 plus years, we've kind of been there, done that, got a t-shirt, right? So we weathered a lot of storms, and brands that haven't been around for a number of years. What's going to happen when God forbid, a COVID happens again, or whatever, what difficult times. They haven't been through those trials and tribulations. So, being a part of a brand that's kind of been around for many, many years says a lot about the success of Mellow, and obviously success of any brand that's been around that long.
How do you keep franchisee morale high when external pressures like labor costs or supply chain shifts start to squeeze their margins?
I mean, money cures all woes, right? When franchisees are making money, that's when they're happy. They can deal with a lot of stuff, but if they're doing a lot of stuff and not making any money, that's when they start to get discouraged. So making sure that we again have the systems in place, produce great products, have great marketing programs, have great operational systems and standards to make sure that franchisee can be successful and make the profits that they want to make.
What is the one industry myth that you're just tired of hearing?
Oh, good Lord. If they're busy on Friday night, they've got to be making money. Everybody goes into a place and, oh my gosh, they're so busy on Friday, they've got to be making money. Well, if they're not busy on Friday, Saturday night, then that's trouble. But it's just because you're busy on Friday, Saturday night doesn't necessarily mean that you're making money. Like I said earlier, come back on a Monday and Tuesday night. Now, granted, you're not going to be as busy on Friday and Saturday, but if there's only one or two people in there on a Monday or Tuesday, there's some trouble there.
Right. I guess my last question is, if you had a piece of advice to give to a potential franchisee, maybe not just for Mellow Mushroom, but interested in getting into any brand, what a piece of advice would you give to them?
There's so many tools that are out there now for potential franchisees, and making sure that when they ask ask a bunch of questions, attend discovery days, go meet the team. And COVID changed a lot of this, but I think that the virtual discovery day is not a good way to evaluate a brand. Having that one-on-one, face-to-face discovery day, go meet them on their turf, on their terms, go visit their offices, their support center, talk to all the people that you'll be dealing with face-to-face, I think is critical. And then obviously doing the research on the FDD, talking to other franchisees. If a franchisor is not willing to introduce you to their franchisees, there might be a problem there, it's you got to be an open book. This is someone that is going to be investing a lot of money into your brand, and you want to make sure they're going to be successful. So giving them access to what, not whatever, but as much information as you can possibly give them. That's why if I'm a franchisee, if I'm looking at a brand, that's what I'm doing. I'm going to discovery days. I'm meeting you face to face. I'm looking at FDDs, and I'm talking to your existing base.
Well, we are out of time. Thanks so much for being with us today. This has been amazing.
Well, Mandy, I appreciate the time. And as always, everybody, have some Mellow Mushroom pizza.
That'll do it for this episode of the Pizza Marketplace podcast, and we'll catch you next time.